President Biden is getting ready to speak to the United Nations General Assembly today. In just a couple of hours, he'll address world leaders on issues including climate change, the ongoing battle against COVID-19, and, of course, recent diplomatic challenges. Nancy Cordes is outside the UN headquarters here in New York City with more on all of this. Good morning, Nancy. The president's speech to the UN is generally a defining moment for U.S. foreign policy. So what kind of speech can we expect to hear from President Biden today?
Good morning, Laura. Well, the White House says that the president, when he speaks shortly, is going to vigorously defend his decision to end the war in Afghanistan after 20 years. And he's going to make the case that it's sort of the end of one chapter, the beginning of a new chapter in foreign policy, and that it clears the way for the U.S. to work intensively with its allies diplomatically to try to tackle the big problems that can't be solved with military force. Problems like COVID-19 and climate change, big existential problems that face the entire world. He is going to argue, as he has in the past few months, that democracy vastly outstrips autocracy growing in the world as a form of government. And he's going to make the case that America is back after 4 years of a president who came here to the UN and had an America First message that never really resonated with the leaders of these 193 countries, as you can imagine. Beyond that, the UN is going to look and feel a lot different than it did last year when, by necessity, all leaders attended virtually. About 2/3 of the world leaders will be back this year. Some are sending in their messages to the UN remotely via pre-recorded addresses, but the president will be here, and so will many other world leaders.
It's really interesting what you said, that you do expect him to be on the defense regarding Afghanistan and regarding diplomacy throughout the world. But all eyes right now are really on the U.S. and France. Can you give us a refresher on the recent diplomatic tension between the U.S. and France and how you think Biden is going to address that?
Sure, and that tension, I have to tell you, is not abating at all. The French foreign minister really unloaded here yesterday afternoon, calling this a brutal decision by the United States to secretly cut a deal for nuclear-powered submarines with Australia, to provide Australia with these submarines to enable the country to better operate in the Asia-Pacific, with the obvious target being China. The U.S. wanting to show China that it is not the only military might in that region. Well, the reason this was a big problem for France, Laura, is because they had cut a deal worth an estimated $66 billion to provide submarines to Australia several years ago, and they were left completely in the dark about this new deal until just a few hours before it was announced. And so now the White House is trying to argue that it is working on the relationship with France, that the long history of friendship between these two countries will prevail. But Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, is notably not going to be delivering an address either in person or virtually. He has decided to leave it to his foreign minister instead. And the White House is still trying to work out a time for the two leaders to speak and try to patch this up over the phone.
$66 billion is not small change and will likely not be easily forgotten. Yesterday, the UN Secretary General said that the relationship between the U.S. and China is, quote, completely dysfunctional, and warned that it could lead to a new Cold War. So what are the concerns there?
The concerns have to do with ongoing war of words and more between the U.S. and China when it comes to trade, when it comes to technology, when it comes to spying. And the White House is really pushing back on the Secretary General's arguments. They're saying that they don't view this relationship as so much of conflict, but more of competition. Still, the president is going to go out of his way here at the UN today to argue that he is not seeking a Cold War with China, something that, as you can imagine, many countries are concerned about, that we compete with China and that he wants to normalize relations with China and move to a more productive relationship. But I have to say, it was really notable that the UN Secretary General said this, just came right out and said that the relationship between the U.S. and China is a dysfunctional one, just before he actually sat down with the president himself. And we're told that President Biden, when he met with the Secretary General, told him face to face that he didn't agree with his characterization.
Well, we're looking forward to a lot of news coming out of this meeting today. Nancy, thank you for your analysis.
You're welcome, Laura.